As expected, the new iPhone 16 event came and went, and in this video, I'll be running through what is new and point out certain exaggerated or misleading claims, which, whether intentional or not, may confuse potential buyers of the iPhone. As a background, I've followed the iPhone ever since Steve Jobs introduced the very first one back in 2007. And I've seen how Apple has changed their marketing when talking about their products. Before anything else, let's run through the top new features of iPhone 16. iPhone 16 has a plethora of solid upgrades. First, it now has a much faster processor named A18, which is 2 generations ahead of the previous iPhone 15's processor. Apple says this processor is 30% faster with a 40% faster GPU and is also 30% more energy efficient. In terms of the display, iPhone 16 features a display 50% tougher than the previous generation. The display also has a maximum brightness of 2000 nits, but that is also the spec of last year's iPhone 15. The display sizes remain the same, 6.1 for the standard iPhone and 6.7 for iPhone 16 Plus. In terms of other upgrades, iPhone 16 now has an action button which allows you to perform a variety of functions. It also has a newly introduced camera control button which allows easy access to the camera with just a click and allows adjustment of camera settings via sliding your finger on the button. Speaking of the camera, iPhone 16's ultra-wide camera now has a wider aperture which lets in 2.6 times more light. With regards to iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max improvements, first the display. The display has been increased in size from 6.1 and 6.7 in the Pro and Max models respectively to 6.3 and 6.9, which are the biggest iPhone displays ever. With regards to the casing strength, which is titanium, has been increased and its scratch resistance improved. Apple also claims the iPhone Pro Max's battery to have been improved to give the best ever battery life. In terms of performance, the new chip for the iPhone 16 Pro models, A18 Pro, is 15 and 20% faster for the CPU and GPU respectively compared to last year's A17 Pro, while using 20% less power. So as you can see, a lot of solid upgrades. Unfortunately, Apple's marketing was apparently not satisfied that these run-of-the-mill improvements would be enough to entice folks to pony up $800 for a new iPhone 16. As such, there were unfortunately some exaggerations and misleading claims which I thought would be useful to be pointed out. The first misleading or exaggerated claim are the innovative features which are not really innovative. Apple used to showcase groundbreaking inventions in their events, from the iPod's click wheel to the iPhone's multi-touch, which were years ahead of the competition and a product of serious R&D. These days, even the most ordinary feature is being called innovative. Take the case of the new camera control button. The button, in its essence, is used to open the camera app and take the shot. Apple continually characterized this button as innovative and packed with innovation. Since when does Apple call a button, which looks and behaves like every other button, innovative? They've never called any similar button in any of their previous products innovative before. Why this one? Apple justifies this button is different because, quote, it could distinguish between a full click and a lighter press, and because, quote, you no longer need to adjust your grip to take your photos. I kid thee not. A more truthful company would call this what it is. It's just a button, and reserve the term innovative for something that is truly a breakthrough, lest the term lose all its meaning. The second exaggerated or misleading claim is that megapixel count matters. In days of old, Apple had a reputation of under-promising and over-delivering. These days, Apple's marketing team seems satisfied to trot out misleading specs in the hope of jiggering up iPhone sales. One example of this is their claim that the iPhone 16's 48 megapixel camera matters because, quote, it has 4 times more resolution than the iPhone 14. As somebody who takes a lot of photos and has a phone with a 100 megapixel sensor, I can manifestly say that this is not true. In fact, in the old days, Apple bucked the trend of hyping up megapixel count, stubbornly keeping it to 12 megapixels because they knew that adding more pixels does not, for the most part, improve image quality. It is the amount of light reaching the sensor that does. But since Apple is unwilling to upgrade the main camera sensor to a larger one, which would be a true improvement, they continually resort to this exaggerated claim, just like every other third-rate phone company. This is really sad to see. An honest company would simply state the iPhone has 12 or 24 megapixels, which is really what the 48 megapixel RAW file will be converted to for the most part. The third exaggerated misleading claim is the iPhone 16 has a 2x telephoto lens on the iPhone. Looking at this slide, you can see how the information is presented to give the impression that Apple actually has a 2x lens when it clearly does not. What in truth Apple is really doing is just cropping content from the 1x's 48 megapixel RAW file to produce the 2x image. If Apple's flawed logic is to be followed, every iPhone camera ever created has a 2x, 3x, 4x, or 10x camera because any photo can be cropped to any size. This is totally misleading. To be fair, every phone company plays this game, but Apple, being of a higher standard, used to rise above this nonsense. The fourth misleading claim is that the iPhone 16 allows you to have 4 lenses in your pocket. Related to the previous claim, this is yet another embarrassment from Apple. Since when is it appropriate marketing to count 2 lenses as 4 lenses? A lens by definition is a tool to bring light to a fixed focal point. Clearly, there is only 2, as this can be plainly seen by looking at the back of the device. A more honest company would simply state that the iPhone 16 has an ultra-wide, which has macro capability, and a 1x with digital zoom. The fifth misleading item is information left out about Apple Intelligence. Apple Intelligence is of course the big feature of this year's event. It allows a vast number of abilities utilizing the power of generative AI to do things like automatically summarize transcripts, rewrite emails, generate images, and a lot more. This feature though is not new. It mimics Samsung Galaxy AI, which was created based on a partnership between Samsung and Google and announced back in January in the Galaxy S24 event, which I reviewed in another video. I'll leave a link in the description. In my view though, Apple's presentation was misleading on a few levels. When talking about generative AI, certain types of tasks require personal data like emails, notes, and photos to be posted to an AI service, which is normally a server located on the internet for the magic to happen. As such, privacy will always be a concern when using such services. Unlike in the Samsung Galaxy AI presentation though, where Samsung made it clear that they were partnering with Google, Apple made no mention of who they were partnering with during the entire 1.5-hour presentation. People would probably assume their data was solely being handled by Apple, but that is not the case. What was not stated was Apple was partnering with OpenAI, which you might know as the makers of ChatGPT. So why would Apple not mention such a big partner, a company which would actually be doing most of the work in their Apple Intelligence initiative? As an example, here is Steve Jobs introducing Google CEO Eric Schmidt during the very first iPhone event. Very transparent. Apparently, the reason for this strange behavior is because OpenAI's reputation is not all that great. If you need proof, here is what Elon Musk, who has a history with OpenAI and knows the CEO very well, posted just last June when he found out that Apple was partnering with OpenAI. He says it's patently absurd that Apple isn't smart enough to make their own AI, yet is somehow capable of ensuring that OpenAI will protect your security and privacy. Apple has no clue what's actually going on once they hand your data over to OpenAI. They're selling you down the river. As you can see, this post was viewed over 50 million times. And once again, Elon Musk was a founder of OpenAI and knows the company very well. As far as I'm aware, Apple never came out to defend OpenAI, perhaps knowing that there is some truth in the rant. And there are many other issues with OpenAI, not just this one, which you can easily find out by a simple internet search. To assuage privacy concerns over Apple Intelligence, Apple during the event announced a solution called private compute, which they continually emphasized would never store your data. Unfortunately though, isn't it true that even if Apple itself is trustworthy and never stores your data, once you give photos to a third party, all bets are off? How can this possibly be monitored? Apple never explains, nor do they mention that there is this problem. So this reliance on third-party services for sensitive data is something Apple should have never done. What Apple should have done was, as Elon suggested in the post, make their own AI service in the same way that Apple made Siri and they made Apple Maps. While those services are probably not the best, they go a long way in ensuring that there is no risk to customer data. In fact, if Apple wanted a model to copy, they can take Elon himself as the model. Elon, back in 2023, established his own AI service, XAI, because of the problems he had with OpenAI. Early this year, XAI began the training process, and in just 4 months, it is now one of the best AI services in the market and can answer questions, write code, generate photos, etc., etc. So while it will be hard to make their own AI service, the hard way is the only enduring way, as the saying goes. And I believe this is the path Steve Jobs would have taken and Apple should take. The fifth and final misleading claim is that you need Apple 16's latest processors to run Apple Intelligence. While this claim may be true if you are running generative AI on your phone, that statement can't be true when running generative AI on third-party servers. I know this for a fact because I run Adobe's Generative Fill, which is as computationally intensive as you would expect, on my 6-year-old iPad, and it all works perfectly and smoothly. So it is extremely disingenuous of Apple to state that all Apple Intelligence must run on the latest chips. Apple should be transparent and explain why they are not allowing Apple Intelligence on other devices when so many generative AI services already exist on the iPhone. So I hope you learned something new in this video. Let me know what you thought of the iPhone event and whether you are buying the new iPhone. Write it down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you like this content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to help keep the videos coming. Until the next video, I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye for now.